Hello and welcome to online charter renewal training. I'm your host, Bill Cameron, and I'm joined by our council's field director, Andrew Nam.
Good evening, everyone.
So I'm going to start out. We have a real wide variety of people on this call. Everything that from people that are brand new to scouting to very veteran folks. So I just want to start out very quickly with a little bit of the jargon of scouting that I'm going to be using throughout this to make sure that everybody knows what I'm talking about. So when we talk about a unit, that is your Cub Scout pack or your Scouts BSA troop or your venturing crew. And that's the group that conducts scouting for your chartered organization. When we talk about a unit charter, that is what authorizes that community organization, like a church or a fire company, et cetera, to operate a scouting unit. And that charter must be renewed annually, and that's what we're talking about this evening. And all that really entails is updating your roster, making a payment, and signing the agreement between the local council and the chartered organization about who will provide what. When we say unit leader, that is not a generic term. Unit leader is specifically the top program leader in the unit. So that would be the Cub master in a pack, the Scout master in a troop, the advisor of a crew, as examples. Okay, so since we got ourselves level set on terminology, so the changes from last year, and this isn't necessarily all of them, but it's some key ones just to let you know right up front. So in past years, we always handed out paper charter renewal packets, typically at in-person roundtables. And we're not doing that this year for reasons related to COVID. So we have emailed the registered committee chair and the unit leader. They've received the access code to get into the internet rechartering system. So they will need to provide that to the person that will be going into the system, and we'll talk about that a little bit more. In terms of fees, there are some new and increased fees this year. In terms of national fees, there's now a new member joining fee for new youth. And there are the national fees for membership and the unit charter fees have increased. And there's a new local council service fee that's replacing the Family Friends of Scouting campaigns unit presentations. In terms of resources, your go-to page, and I'll show you a screenshot of this in just a second, is out on our council's website. That page has been updated, and that basically is going to have everything you need for rechartering except for that specific access code. Some changes this year. There's a combined instructions and guidelines document where we tried to put everything in one place. And also this year, there's a financial assistance application that applies to that new local council service fee only. So this is a screenshot of the page out on the council website, and it has an introduction here and who to contact if you have any questions or problems, starting with your unit commissioner, going through your whichever district you're in, your district commissioner, and so on. On the left side are a bunch of references, the letter from our council commissioner about this year's chartering effort, those instructions and guidelines, etc. I would invite you to take a look through all of these resources and familiarize yourself, especially if you're going to end up being the person that is coordinating this for your unit. So the deadline, the complete charter packet needs to be received at the council office in Doylestown no later than December 7th, 2020. That doesn't mean get started on the 2020. It doesn't mean get started on December 31st. There's a lot of myths out there about grace periods and that type of thing. The unit charters expire on December 31st. And if you don't get it in by December 7th, we may not have time to make sure that it's all correct and complete and get your charter renewed for 2021. There is no grace period anymore. So at the end of the year, if you have not been renewed, your expired unit ceases to exist. And what that means is that your members are no longer BSA members, that you cannot participate or meet in unit, district, or council events. The youth can't earn achievements. And maybe most importantly here, you have no insurance coverage for liability or accident and sickness, because you're basically, you don't have a unit. So you don't have any of those things. So it's very important to get these things in on time. So starting out with the, what can you do now in order to facilitate this process? First thing would be confirm that your chartered organization and an executive officer are correct. So is your chartered organization willing and able to charter your unit for the next calendar year for 2021? I know the PACs tend to run more on a school year, but chartering is done on a calendar year, January through December 31st in our council. Also, so if that is not the case, if your chartered organization is not willing and able, please reach out to your unit commissioner, your district commissioner, if you don't know who your unit commissioner is, so that we can be working with you to either resolve that issue or find you a new organization if you need to. The next would be, is your current executive officer registered? And so this would be the head of your chartered organization. It could be the pastor of a church, for example, or the president of a parent teachers organization. It's whoever the executive officer is. And the way that that can be identified is using the member manager tool on my.scouting.org. And this is available, can be accessed by any of the top members, the top leaders of your unit and their designates. So if that executive officer is changed, you will have the ability to print their name when you print out the charter renewal to get their signature. You can just print their name, but do let us know if you know there's a change. If the head of your organization has changed, please let us know. In the system itself, the unit processor cannot change the executive officer. Okay, so that's something that has to be done outside of that system. The executive officer is also the one who signs the annual unit charter agreement, which essentially is an agreement between that your chartered organization and the local council about who is going to provide what as part of this relationship. The executive officer is a non-paying position, so you don't have to pay any membership dues. But it's, say you have a pack and a troop and a crew, or maybe two troops, you have a boy troop and a girl troop. The executive officer is the same for all of the units from that chartered organization. So the next thing check is, are your current unit key 3 leaders registered? And those can also be checked at member manager. And some more scouting jargon here. The unit key 3 leaders consist of your chartered organization representative. And just like the executive officer, they must be the same for all units in that chartered organization. Your committee chair, and then your unit leader. They make up the key 3. If you have somebody operating in that role right now, but they're not registered in that role, please submit a BSA Adult Application form for them immediately, because they need to be receiving the communications about this during the fall here, and they need to be in those positions to be able to sign off on the paperwork that they need to sign off on. Okay, the next step would be to select your unit processor. And this is the person who's going to go into the internet rechartering system and actually make the changes that need to be done. They certainly don't have to do everything we're talking about. So in terms of checking on who is going to be returning as a member, who needs training, pulling together the funding, all that can all be other committee members or other leaders within the unit. So don't feel like that is like the one person who's doing all the work of the recharter. They are typically selected by the unit's committee chair, who consults with the charter org rep and the unit leader, the other parts of the key three. And once you have that name, it really ought to identify who that person's going to be. Tell your unit commissioner or your district commissioner who that person is going to be, so we know who to contact. So only the unit processor has access to the internet rechartering system. It's an older system. It's a very older system, and really only one person is allowed to log into this. So you don't share the account and password. You want to keep one person in there for continuity purposes. They're going to prepare, they really need to review the current presentation on internet rechartering, look at the frequently asked questions and the interactive tutorial, and be familiar with the processing guidelines at the page that I showed you before that council has. So as soon as the unit processor gets that access code that we emailed out to the committee chair and the unit leader, they should go ahead and register and log in to internet rechartering so that they can confirm that they actually have access. Once in a while, we get a code that doesn't work. So we want to make sure that that they do try it out. Okay, there's some minimums in order to recharter. And those are, in terms of adult leaders, you need to have your charter org rep, your committee chair, and your unit leader. So that's your key three. You also have to have two other committee members in addition to the chair of the committee. And for cub packs, you need to have at least one den leader. For youth, you have to have 5 paid youth members. If you have, say, 4, or, I don't want to go much lower than that, but depending on your circumstances, if you know that people are joining in February or something like that, or that there's extenuating circumstances right now, the Scout executive, Magna Gunderson, does have the ability to grant an exception if he decides to do so. You'd have to convince him that your unit's still viable. So those are the minimums, but a real key point here, please, please, please register all the adults that have direct contact with youth members. You don't want to be risking youth safety to save money or to avoid training. It's really important to have all those people registered. You can imagine what can happen if you let people near youth and they haven't had proper background checks. It's not a good day. In terms of the unit roster, so you're going to want to take a look at that, and that can be done at Member Manager. You can look at both the adult and the youth members. And again, the unit key 3 has access to this, as well as their key 3 delegates, which they can set up in a tool also at the same site called Organization Security Manager. They can set up key 3 delegates so that other people can see that. There's also other roles like a training chair that can get in there and look at training manager as an example. So you want to identify what changes or additions need to be made to that roster. You want to find out who's going to be continuing as members into 2021, and where they're saying they're not going to continue, you want to make sure that they're not being dropped from the unit without a good reason, and really keep inviting them to return, even if they do drop. And if they have a problem with your specific unit, maybe they can't make that night anymore, or the time's not good for them, or they're not fitting in with your culture. There are other units out there. So please try to keep every youth we can in scouting. So you want to identify which member applications need to be collected where you have new youth and adults. And you want to ask them all to verify or provide updates to their home address, their phone numbers, their email address, and whether or not they're getting a Boys Life subscription. So if anybody is missing, anybody who's active right now in your unit is missing from the roster, please submit an application form for them immediately. Don't wait for the rest of the charter process to continue. And I'll talk about this in a second. So the reason you want to submit those immediately, for one thing, for the adults, you want to make sure that they've had those background checks and the youth protection training, because the safety of our youth is paramount. You want to make sure that they're covered by liability insurance, and that if they were to do something, that the rest of your leaders and your chartered organization are covered by liability insurance. Same thing with accident and illness. You want to make sure youth can earn advancements. If they're getting Boys Life, you want to make sure that they're getting that. Or for the adults, Scouting magazine, which is online now. And you want to make sure that people are getting the appropriate communications. If they're not registered, they're not receiving what they need to. And a real big thing for those of you that are going to be the unit processor, it means that if you get those applications in now, when you load up the roster into the tool, you're not going to have to add members manually into the tool and attach all the paperwork. It just makes it much, much easier. Okay, so and an application is required for all new adults and youth. Okay, for the youth applications, you want to make sure you're using the latest version of the BSA Youth Applications. A lot of times people go into the council office and take a 2-inch stack of applications. They tend to change pretty rapidly. So you can go out and Google scouting.org forms, and it'll bring up all the applications, including the youth application, the adult application. The current one has the number 1218 in the lower right-hand corner of the cover page. Make sure you're using blue or black ink. If you turn it in with the charter renewal as opposed to prior, they're going to get registered for the remainder of the current charter year. They're going to get charged prorated fees. And if you don't include the money for that, it'll be charged to your unit's account at council. Don't wait to save the money. As I mentioned before, it's just for the few bucks, it's not worth it for the downside of it. In terms of new adult application, the latest version has 02-2020 in the lower right-hand corner. You have to make sure that those are signed by the applicant and either the charter org rep or the executive officer. They also have to sign the page that's the additional disclosures and background check authorization. That allows BSA to not just do a background check at the moment they're registering, but at different times as well, not just once and done. If they're new, they need the youth protection training certificate to show they've taken that. And if they're going to be volunteering in Pennsylvania, they need to submit their Pennsylvania background checks, and there's information on that out at the council site. And all new applicants will have a criminal background check completed per BSA National. So if you have changes in adult leader positions, so these aren't new adult leaders, they're already registered, but they're going to change positions. You don't have to wait to change their position in internet recharting, especially if they're a key 3 member. It's very important to get that changed up front. If they're just changing from, say, a den leader to a Weeblos leader, you could probably wait for, to do that during internet rechartering. There's no cost to change positions during the year. If you submit the applications immediately, you don't have to chase it down later. And if you're turning in an adult application for a change, the charter org rep needs to sign that. So if somebody is going to start in a new position as of January 1st, then just update that when you get into the internet rechartering system. In terms of PA clearances, for those of you that will be volunteering in Pennsylvania, those background checks or clearances are valid for 5 years. They were first asked for or mandated by the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania 5 years ago. So they're expiring for anybody who's been a leader that long. So there's going to be a lot of these expiring this year. So if they're dated before February 28th, 2016, and think of it as like March 1st of 2021, okay, they still have to be valid in order for that person to be included on the charter renewal. Okay, and there is a site out at on the council website to update those. Youth protection training is required. It's valid for 2 years, much like the clearances 2 years ago. There was a new version of YPT, and so many people have this expiring this year as well. So you want to be checking that out at Training Manager, using the Train Manager tool to look at what those expiration dates are. And anybody who's got an expiration date before next March, they need to get that done. So even if it's valid now, even if it's valid in December, they still need to retake it for you to recharter. If the training's expired, when you go into internet rechartering, you get an error message that you can't add that adult. If they've taken it and have a certificate, but it's just isn't in the system correctly, there is a way around that. But without YPT up to date, you will not be allowed to process the charter renewal with that adult. There is a mandatory training policy in our council, and it covers both youth protection training and position-specific training. And the specific details of the policy are described out on the website. Another thing you want to do is plan to be able to pay the fees for your unit. Full payments due the same time as all the other paperwork on December 7th this year. You need to know how much it's going to be and plan for how to pay, whether it's through fundraising or collection of member dues. There's a form that you're going to be using to calculate this that's out on that council website called the Unit Verification Worksheet and Payment Form. I have some of the fees down here. I can, what it is for the youth, what it is for the adults, and the unit, the annual charter fee is going up from $275. And a frequently asked question is there a discount for families with more than one youth or adult member? And the answer to that is no, there is not. So in terms of calculating and making the payment, you're not going to be doing this up front necessarily, but it is a good idea to think about this. One thing I'll point out right now is that the amount due may be different from what the internet rechartering system says, particularly for packs. And the reason for that is that if you have Lion and adult partners, it's $5 for each of those for the accident and sickness insurance, and that will not come up in the internet rechartering system, but it is due to council. That's something local to our council. And I think we'll cover the rest of this in the next segment, but basically the preferred method is to either use your unit account at council or write a check to the council. Our council cannot at this time accept credit or debit cards or automated clearinghouse, e-checks, Venmo, Zelle, anything like that at the moment. And the unit account will be used for any shortages or overpayments if you make a mistake in your charter renewal. Also, something new this year, there's financial assistance available. The council is committed to ensuring that no youth loses the opportunity to be a scout based on finances. Okay, so they're going to actively work with families and units to help make sure that we can get youth into scouting. So there is a new financial assistance application for that applies only to the local council service fee, which is $60 per youth. That form has to be filled out by the parent or guardian, and submitted directly to the council office. After decision has been made, they'll be notified along with the unit leader. The reason the unit leader needs to know that is because they need to know if the person's getting assistance, because it affects how much the unit needs to pay as part of the charter renewal. And then the forms are on the council's website, or upon request to the council office, they can get you one as well. So another thing that you probably want to be thinking about doing right now, given how long it takes to get a meeting with some people. So you want to schedule a review of the final draft of your charter renewal application with your unit commissioner, or if you don't have one, your district commissioner. And you want to do that before it's submitted online. That's really important, because once it's submitted online, you can't make any changes to it. So when you get to that stage where it's asking you, are you ready to approve it and submit it? That's when you want to be reviewing it. Make sure we can help identify and correct a lot of problems, and it'll save you a lot of headaches of trying to correct things after it's already been submitted. The other thing, and maybe the harder people to get a hold of sometimes, is the executive officer for your chartered organization, because you're going to need their signature and approval for the charter renewal application, as well as for the annual charter agreement. And I'll tell you, this is one of the most common reasons for late charter renewals. The number one reason is probably not starting early enough, but this is a big reason, especially if you let this go past Thanksgiving. These people become very hard to get a hold of in December. Okay, the internet rechartering system I've mentioned a couple times. This is an application. It's a web browser based application. It's I'll be polite and say it's a legacy application. It's old, and it's showing its age. It's supported on several browsers. It doesn't work well on Apple products. You want to disable your pop-up blocker to make it work properly. This is going to let your unit processor update the unit's member information, your roster, and to prepare to the actual charter renewal application that you have to produce. You're able to do that online. There's 3 different ways you can either get to it directly through the council website or through your my.scouting account. You need to have the access code. Again, one person goes into this. They go in and register, and last year's code does not work. Okay, so a suggested schedule of, how do you get from here to December 7th and not have it be a day which will live in infamy as far as charter renewals are concerned. So already by now, you really should have confirmed your chartered organization and your executive officer and your unit key 3 leaders, and have picked who's going to be your unit processor. Over the next week here, you want to be planning how are you going to fund your payment for the fees. Start reviewing your youth and adult rosters and figuring out what changes need to be made there. For your leaders, review your youth protection training and your clearances. And then schedule those dates for the reviews and signatures, ideally before Thanksgiving, because of people becoming less available, particularly where you have religious institutions being the chartered organizations. The leaders of those religious institutions can get very hard to get a hold of over the holidays. You want to make sure that people are completing their youth protection training and PA clearances. If you don't know if their clearances are up to date, it's really the unit's responsibility, and actually the chartered organization's responsibility to make sure that volunteers have those in Pennsylvania. If you don't have those, you should be asking people for them. And if they don't have them, yes, we have to submit them to council, but that's like a backup. If they don't have them, we should be storing those within the unit. And so if, ask them for them. If they don't have them, tell them to go do them again. You want to be turning in all those youth and adult applications immediately. Don't wait. They'll get put on your roster, and then you can load them into the internet rechartering system. Go through the first 4 stages. Once you get to that point, you want to review that draft with your commissioner. You're going to make any updates based on that review. Then you're going to complete stage 5, which is to submit it and print the charter renewal, get your signatures. Have a wonderful Thanksgiving. If for some reason you still have work to do, you can gather your paperwork together and have contingency time the following week and get everything in no later than December 7th. If you get all this done earlier, even better. Anna Marie, the council registrar, will thank you very much, I'm sure. So what needs to be submitted? This list is out there, but it's basically your full report package that comes out of the internet rechartering system, any applications, including those additional disclosure forms, any clearances and youth protection training clearances. There's something, the unit verification worksheet and payment form. You're going to fill that out and the commissioner will go over that with you. Your payment. Most units are using the Journey to Excellence scorecard to continue to improve. And if you want recognition, there's an order form for recognition items. So if you have questions or need assistance, what we're doing this year is in order. You should contact your unit commissioner, your district commissioner. For those of you that may not know what district you're in, Hunterdon and Mercer are fairly self-explanatory. Tamanin is the lower part of Bucks County, and Tohickon is the upper part of Bucks County. The next would be the council commissioner, followed by the registrar, and then lastly, our terribly overworked field director, who's current. If you don't know, there's no district executives right now, so he is covering all the districts in addition to his normal job and probably 2 or 3 other jobs. So we don't want to bother him if we don't have to. Same thing with Anna Marie. Okay. Andrew, any questions that came up that you want to share with everyone?
So I have fielded probably 99% of those questions. A lot of them were sent to me directly, which is great. Thank you. One question regarding YPT, is it for all adults or registered adults only, i.e. tiger and lion parents are required, ?
You want to take a shot at that one?
Oh, I thought you were going to add that. That's what I was saying. So as I mentioned for a couple people, so youth protection is required for all registered leaders. When it comes to the tiger and lion parents, because they don't fill a technical adult application, they are not required to because they're unpaid members. That being said, it is always highly recommended and encouraged that all people that are involved, all adults, should take the course. It's an hour-long course. It's well worth the time. It's good to know some of the information. I know a lot of units right now that actually require it every single year, which is really good practice. So that is a recommendation.
Yeah, the more people you have, the more adults you have with youth protection training, the more they can look out and prevent any potential for issues.
Another question that came up is, so if you are unsure whether you received the unit code for whatever reason, we could have a bad email for you. It was initially sent out to every committee chair and unit leader. If for some reason you don't have it, or anything could have happened, not a problem. Your district commissioners all have the access codes of all of your units. So if you, if you don't know who your district commissioner or unit commissioner is, if you go on our website, all of the district commissioners along with their emails are there. So please reach out to them. And for some reason, if they don't get back to you, obviously you're more than welcome to reach out to Anna Marie or myself to help you with that. So let's, sorry, a lot of questions as I was talking. So there was another question regarding, Sorry, I'm trying to multitask with all this. The terms signatures and forms keep getting used, but I thought the whole process was online. Is there a mix of online and paper items required to complete the process?
Short answer is yes.
So I will tell you that when you're going through the online process, there will be one point of a question that's going to ask you whether they approve that, whether they want to sign. And when I mean they, I mean the institutional head or charter representative, wish to sign virtually or digitally, however way you want to say. There's an option to say yes or no. So if you choose yes, then the online charter, they can sign virtually. If they choose no, what will happen is you'll still be able to process the charter. When you print out the charter paperwork, there are going to be 3 lines on there that are going to require physical signatures. The other thing that you're talking about physical signatures is the charter agreement. The charter agreement has to be signed by your executive officer or institutional head, your charter representative, and in this case, your council representative, which would be me, Um,
Okay, we're going to cover some of that too as we go through the next section on the internet rechartering system itself. Anything else of note? I'm being a little cognizant of our time here, Andrew.
um, the one question is who is required to be registered adults. I think you had a slide on that. So for the registered adults, what we'll do is we're going to share the slide deck and you'll see exactly who are the required adults that are going to be needed on your chart, minimally on your charter to be able to move it forward. So that, again, it will be sent out after this.
It's also listed on that unit verification form that's out on the council website. It lists what the minimum requirements are on there as well. Everything I showed you here, just about every word is in other documents that are out there. Okay, I'm gonna wrap up this session, and I'm recording this one separately, so I'm gonna stop the recording on this one.